brothers and sisters, cats and chicks, Dr. Mouth here with you one more time, slipped through the cracks where we examine lots of strange vinyl music that has somehow just disappeared into the ether. Not gone forever. No, I won't let that happen. Not gone forever. But just kind of, dissipated from the public's view. So I'm here to set some of that straight. Now, if you saw my last video, and if you didn't see the last video, why are you watching this video? I'm not saying you have to watch them in order, but the last one I did, I was talking about a big score of 45s that I got in a thrift store here in Toronto, and I showed off 5 amazing 45s. Well, the score was so good, like I walked out of there with, 20, 30 45s, that I've got some more that I want to show you and play for you. And I've got another 5 here from the same batch, the same store, the same day. And in the same thing, we got some garage rock, we got some soul, we got some R&B. It's pretty good, cool mix here. So let's start it off with this band here. Here's the 45 on Cameo Parkway. And I'll just let you see the name of the band there. Can you see that? The British Walkers. Who would be in a band called the British Walkers, do you think? What kind of band would the British Walkers be? I mean, obviously from looking at this, it's probably from the 60s. Most of the 45s in the pile were. Maybe they're just a band that really wants to push the fact that they're part of the British invasion. They like the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and the Kinks and that kind of thing. Well, it's sort of like that, but not exactly. They weren't British. They were American. And they just really did like British music. And they started in 1964. So that's the year the Beatles hit really big in North America. So I can understand the idea that we just put British in the name. They'll buy our records like mad, in droves. It didn't exactly happen, but that's what happened. The British Walkers got together in 1964. A guy named Robert Howard was the guy who put the band together. And their very first 45 came out that same year, 1964. It was called I Found You. And the person that played lead guitar on this went on to become one of the most revered electric blues guitar players of all time. One of my personal favorites, that's for sure. And that's Roy Buchanan. Believe it or not, Roy Buchanan was actually in the British Walkers. So I thought that was really cool. I'm guessing probably might even be his first band he was ever in. So I thought that was very interesting. But however, by the time that this 45 comes out by the British Walkers, it's 1967. Roy Buchanan's not in the band anymore. But they're still doing some pretty cool stuff. They're always a good mixture of garage rock and R&B soul. So it's got that kind of nastiness of garage rock, but the good intensity of soul. And on this one here, they're doing the Sam Cooke, oops, that's the wrong side. They're doing the Sam Cooke classic, Shake, which had been a hit almost right around the same time as this. I think a little bit earlier, Otis Redding had done a version of it, and it was a big hit as well. But the British Walkers tried to have a go at it here. Interesting thing about this song, the British Walkers were approached by a company that was called the British Walkers Shoe Company. And they said that if the British Walkers could get this record into the top 10, because when it first got released, it was actually the first recording of their career that was showing some chart activity. It was in the lower regions, but this company said, if you can get it all the way up to the top 10, we will endorse you. We will give you a large amount of money, let them be in their commercials, probably be in their print ads, wearing their shoes and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of what the British Walkers tried to do once the record did start to get into the charts. However, a couple things kind of worked against them. As I mentioned, the Otis Redding version of Shake was such a big hit that it really kind of took some of the steam out of this. And then the final nail in the coffin really is that this label, Cameo Parkway, you can see the cool little label there, this particular company was bought by none other than Alan Klein. That's right, the infamous manager of the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, one of the most ruthless businessmen in all of rock and roll. And this is kind of an interesting point in rock history, because when Alan Klein bought Cameo Parkway, he renamed it ABKCO, which became the wing of the Stones. The Stones records were then on ABKCO for the next little while until they actually had their own label later on in the 70s. And that's the beginning of Alan Klein's little empire there with ABKCO. So unfortunately, though, for the British Walkers, when he took over and renamed the label, he didn't keep any of the artists. Everybody was let go that was on Cameo Parkway. So that also kind of No, with no promotion, it was hard for the British Walkers song to get any higher up the charts. But man, oh man, doesn't matter, because if you were, if you're one of those guys that's a soul DJ nowadays, you would die for this 45, because it's a shaker, it's a barn burner, guaranteed to get people out of their seats and onto the dance floor, and I'm going to show you why. So let's listen to a little shake.
In the morning, shake. Baby, color in the evening, shake. Don't ever leave me, shake.
Cats and Chicks, next up on the hit parade. We're going to go a little bit in a garage rock direction here on Paula Records. This is the Uniques, who, honestly, when you think about it, since they're not a well-known band at all nowadays, were they unique? I don't know. They may not have been unique. In fact, this does sound like a lot of garage rock and soul from that period, but I don't care. It's really, really good. What they did on this 45 is really, really good. They were never a big band on the charts, never made a big impression, never had any big hits. The real only point of notice with the Uniques is that the lead singer was a man named Joe Stampley, who went on to have a lot of success in the country and western field in the 70s. He had a lot of big tunes. He even took some old Uniques tune and covered them as country and western tunes. He was incredibly successful in his records charting, sometimes at the higher regions, sometimes in the middle, sometimes in the lower. Like, he has over 60 different records that charted at various times throughout the 70s and 80s. So pretty prolific guy, that's for sure, here with the Uniques and Joe Stampley. But he also, too, he had a #1 hit with Mo Brandy. They got together and did a duet, and they would do kind of country novelty songs, and they had a tune called Just Good Old Boys that was a #1 hit for them in the 70s. So really, that's the big thing with the Uniques, is that Joe Stampley came out of this band. But for us now to listen to it, we got some rockin', rompin' good soul here. The B-side, yeah, I'm going with the B-side again. The A-side is definitely a good tune, don't get me wrong. It's not like, ooh, P.U., it stinks. No, it's good. It's a garage rock thumper. It's called Run and Hide. Really, really kicks. Very good. But I have more of an affinity for this one because it's more of an R&B soul kind of rave up here on the B side. And I love the attitude, too. Goodbye, so long. Just has to be said sometimes. There's no way getting around it. So a pretty corking, smoking tune here from the Uniques. And we're going to just lay it on me, baby. Lay some of the Uniques as they say goodbye, so long.
Goodbye.
Now that we've said goodbye and so long to the Uniques, time to move on here. Cats and Chicks. And coming up next, a very familiar name. I guess if you're a fan of the Old West, that's for sure. Jesse James, ladies and gentlemen. And as far as I can tell, no relation to the notorious outlaw of the old Wild West. I'm guessing it's just one of those things, has the same name, no relation at all. He's a soul singer. This is a Soul 45, as you can see there from the title. Believe in Me, Baby. Now, you see after the title there, it says Part 1. And this was one of the greatest things I loved about Soul 45s, R&B 45s in the 60s, that they were often split in two like this, because when they would record them in the studio, the band would get warmed up, they'd play the song, and a lot of times they would just keep playing and playing. James Brown was he did this constantly, man. There's a million great James Brown 45s that are split in half, like Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, parts 1 and 2, where on part 2 it's just a jam and instrumental. Get It Together, one of his songs about staying in school, part 2, it's just him working out the band, and he's getting them to come in and out on cue and stuff. It's like you getting to listen to a rehearsal on the B side of a 45. So pretty amazing stuff there. This one here, though, this one's a little different. Jesse James, not a well-known artist, but quite prolific. In fact, he started in the 60s, but he's done records all the way up until the 2014. He did a CD called, I love this title too. I love this title. He did this CD called My Baby Left Me on Facebook. So Jesse James, very prolific, has been doing records ever since the 60s, but this one, it's definitely different. It's not like those other part 1, part 2 records. It kind of starts out in a really good way, and it's like, believe in me, baby. So he's going to his baby and saying, times are tough, it's rough. It gets topical. He mentions Vietnam and stuff, and he says, times are tough, but we'll if you just believe in me, baby, make me strong, we'll stay together, everything will work out. And part 1, it starts off pretty positive, it's pretty cool. But then, as it gets going into part 2, is it kind of almost does this weird flip. He starts to get into this really kind of negative thing. He does this little bit where he talks about how women need to have 2 men in their lives, one who will do it in the bedroom and one who will do it in the workplace, one who bring home the bacon and one who will supply him the fun in the bedroom. So he talks all about that, and then he does this it goes into this next bit where he talks about women being irresponsible and not taking care of their kids. And he does this thing about the little baby at 3 o'clock in the morning, not knowing where mom is, going over to the neighbors and going, "Where's my mommy? Where's my mommy?" It's very bizarre 45. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, very bizarre. And, if the flow of the narrative isn't weird enough, on top of it, he's got this whole, well, it's an audience, I guess, but I don't know. It's not like he's recorded in a venue, like a live record, like James Brown live at the Apollo or something like that. I get the impression there's just a bunch of people sitting with him in the studio. So as he talks over the music and asks for his baby to believe in him, people are kind of doing that call and response. Yeah, testify, tell us about it, say your thing. And it's kind of weird, especially since it changes, but everybody just kind of keeps hooting and hollering. I don't know if they just wanted to give it a live feel or what they were going for, but I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm actually going to play a fairly sufficient chunk of this one, because believe in me, listeners, believe in me, this one is definitely one that you'll want to hear again and again and again. Believe in me, baby, from Jesse James.
Oh! Listen to me now. People have always asked me, say, "Jesse, why you always talk about the fast life and things like that?" I don't knock the game. It's a good game if you play it right. But there's only one thing that makes me sick in my heart. It makes me real sick and mad in my heart. And that is this. The women out there, yeah, they won't take care of children. They won't take care of children, no. Listen to me now. When your child wakes up about 3 o'clock, baby, and you're not there, he begins to get a little worried. He needs you home. So he goes all through the house looking for you, baby. And these are the words you can hear him say when he's alone all by himself looking for you. This very thing. Mommy, where are you, mommy? I need you, mommy, yeah. So the next thing he does, he goes to his next door neighbors and he says, "Have you seen my mother?" And the lady shakes her head very nonchalantly and says these words: "No, I have not seen you, mommy." So he gets mad and starts screaming these words: "Oh, baby, oh, where is my mommy? Yeah, why don't you come home, mommy? Yeah, I need you home, mommy. Yeah, I need my mother home."
Now see, Did I not tell you? Did I not say that Believe in Me Baby, Jesse James, that 45 blows my mind. But we're going to move on. We're going to regroup, collect ourselves. We're going to move on. We're going to get back into some more R&B, though, ladies and gentlemen, because one of my all-time favorites here, the one and only Johnny Guitar Watson. Now, I know it only says Johnny Watson there on the label, and the track is called Soul Food. But Johnny Guitar Watson is how he's known by everyone who enjoys his music, and that's a lot of people. Johnny Guitar Watson started in the 50s. He's one of those artists that was very influential on many guitar players. Guys like Steve Miller blatantly stole from him. That whole Gangster of Love thing, that was an old 45 that Johnny Guitar Watson did in the 50s. Frank Zappa, huge fan of Johnny Guitar Watson. When Zappa heard Watson's 45, and it came out in like 1954, and it's called 3 Hours Past Midnight, It just was the be-all, end-all for Zappa. Huge influence on Zappa's own playing. Zappa even got Johnny Guitar Watson to play on some of his records, like he's on One Size Fits All. And in fact, when Zappa passed away in 1993, he was actually working on a musical project that involved Johnny Guitar Watson. So, he loved him, and that just shows you what an influence this guy was. Really talented guitar player. Some of those old 50s singles of his are just mind-blowing, the stuff he's doing with the guitar. He's got one called Space Guitar that's just great. I just love it. It's one of my favorite Johnny Guitar Watson tracks. And really, really prolific guy. Had a career right up until his death. I mean, like, literally right up until his death. He did records all through the 60s. This one that we're talking about, Soul Food. Whoops, I got it upside down. Soul Food, that one is also from about mid-60s, 67. But he went in all through the 70s. He went super funky in the 70s. Here's one of his albums from the 70s. Johnny Guitar Watson, Funk Beyond the Call of Duty, baby. He was great. He was such a character, super entertaining. His funk records in the 70s are really great. His career was almost revitalized again when these records came out. He was doing them right into the 80s and playing all through to the 90s. And like I said, he had a career that went right to the very end. The man literally died on stage. Yokohama, Japan, 1996. Johnny Guitar Watson's playing a concert and actually passed away on stage. Got to play until the very end. So that just tells you what a madman this guy was. A total character and super cool. So the tune we're going to hear from him off this 45 that I found, which by the way is on the OK label. OK is one of the greatest R&B labels of all time. There's stuff that they put out in the 40s and 50s, Big Maybelle, the first Screamin' Jay Hawkins, the first Little Richard. This was amazing. In fact, if you want to know more about OK, there's this amazing CD box set. This is fantastic. Everybody is on here. Big Maybelle, like I mentioned, Screamin' Jay Hawkins, tons of the Treniers who did tunes like Poontang. Really, really wicked great R&B. If you want to know more about OK, you should definitely check out this box set. But today, as I said, we've got Johnny Guitar Watson from the 60s, and this one, it's called Soul Food. And there's always been a thing with R&B, especially soul and funk music, about food. They love to write songs based around food because for them, music, food, it's all part of the community. It's all stuff that goes together, and I totally agree. I always thought it was great. I mean, you had bands like James Brown's band, the JBs, doing tunes like Pass the Peas and stuff like that. And you had these awesome CD compilations that came out in the 90s. There was one on Rhino called I Love Barbecue that just showed you all these great songs about barbecue and R&B, jazz, funk tunes. There's a tune on it called Pork Chops by the Dorsettes, man. And if you haven't lived until you've heard a doo-wop song about pork chops, I'm telling you. So always a big thing with soul and funk music to talk about food. So that's what we got, Johnny Guitar Watson. And literally, all I think he did was sit down with a menu and just list off a bunch of stuff that he wanted to eat, because that's basically what the song is. And to me, no need to get heavy. It doesn't have to be a boy-girl song. It doesn't have to be political commentary. Nope. Reading the soul food menu is good enough for me when it's Johnny Guitar Watson.
I don't want no New York steak. I don't want no prime rib. Don't want no lobster laying in no plate. All of them fancy foods, girl, just ain't my groove. I said some chitlins with stand up and hit me, say, yeah, 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 I need some soul food. Yes, I do, right now, yeah. Let me tell you something else right here. Listen, I ain't no movie star. I don't want no caviar. Ain't trying to be no sophisticate. Girl, if you want a friend, I said until the end, just put some neck bones on my plate. Yeah, I need some soul food. Yes, I do. Say right now, and I just want to holler and say, yeah, yeah, yeah. I need some soul food. Yes, I do. Right now, yeah. Let me play the Kool-Aid on this guitar.
Okay, now I know after that, Johnny Guitar Watson singing about the soul food, some of you might be hungry, but hang on. I only got one more 45, and then you can go off and snack and have whatever you like. And I want to finish off with the garage rock heaviness here. This is a great one as well. Check it out. Look at this beautiful sleeve. It's on Regency, which was a very popular Canadian label, distributor label in the 60s. All the James Brown records on King were distributed in Canada before Polydor took over on the Regency label. And this one, they're called the Felicity. Now, even in 1967, who would name their band the Felicity? That just seems like a very strange name for me, but who am I to say? That is what they call themselves. And the tune is called Hurtin'. And it's not the first appearance of Hurtin' on 45 by this band, actually. It's kind of weird. This band was two other bands before they were the Felicity. And then they were a band after the Felicity too, but I'll get into that. At first they were the Four Speeds, and they recorded a version of Hurtin'. Then they decided to change the name to just the Speeds. I guess they didn't want a number involved. And then as the Speeds, they also recorded Hurtin'. And both those versions are good, but really this version by the Felicity, which is what they changed the name to next, it's a big jump, from the Speeds to Felicity. But I think the Speeds record was issued on a label called Felicity, so I think they might have got it from there. And this is the third version of Hurtin' by the same band, and it's the best one. It's the best recorded. It's the strongest performance by the band as well. It's pretty rockin'. The bass sounds really good. It's a good kind of heavy garage rockin' tune. I think you'll really enjoy it. The other cool thing about this, only 45 that the Felicity ever did. After this, they turned into a band called Shiloh and kind of went a country rock route. And then the man who had been the drummer in all these bands went and met this other guy, and they formed a band that became one of the biggest bands of all time. No word of a lie. These guys really are one of the biggest bands of all time. Are you curious? Are you wondering who it might be? Well, I'll tell you. The drummer in the Speeds, the Four Speeds, the Felicity, and Shiloh was none other than Don Henley. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is where the man from the Eagles gets his start. After Shiloh broke up, Don Henley ended up playing in Linda Ronstadt's band, and that's where he met Glenn Frey, and the two of them decided to get together and form the band that eventually became the Eagles. So there you go, starting all the way back here with a little Hurtin' tune. It's Don Henley on the drums, ladies and gentlemen, and a great little garage rocker that is going to rock your mind, and you will no longer be hurt.
Nothing can ease the pain. I'll never be the same since I saw you with him. Is that rain that I see, or just a part of
brothers and sisters, hemsters and hempettes, that is it for this edition of Slip Through the Cracks. I hope you enjoyed checking out those 45s. And if anything, you learned the lesson that as an eternal thrifter, you must always learn, and you must always keep this in the back of your mind. You may not find something great every time you go into a thrift store, but there are times when you're going to be in the right place at the right time, just like I was to find all these great 45s. And all those years of digging and scratching and kicking and gouging in the mud and the blood and the beer are going to be all worth it when you find that one little treasure that makes you go, Shazam! That's it. All right, I am out of here. Dr. Mouse saying so long. Check me out on Instagram if you want to see some stuff going on there. I'm also available on Facebook if you can find me. I'm sure you can. And, of course, if you enjoy these videos, don't want to miss out on any of them, there's a little subscription box right at the bottom there. You can subscribe, and then you'll get a notice, and everything will be good, as Dr. Mouth will be right there in your mailbox, getting ready to take you through another journey as we slipped through the cracks. And I thank you for watching.